So the video today is not educational in any sense, but I hope it's going to be fun. You know how doctors are becoming more cynical and teachers are trying to teach everybody? Professional deformation is an interesting concept. I thought that maybe there are some things that programmers do as well, and I wanted to go over them with you today. There are some things that programmers never do, and let's start with something everybody knows about. We don't deploy on Friday evening. And for people outside of tech, it can be kind of weird, but for us, it's pretty obvious. Deploying to production means making your code available for your end users. And if you do it on Friday evening and something goes wrong, well, your weekends are not going to be as fun as you'd like. And you may think that you probably tested everything, but in reality, even if we have testing environments, quite often they're not as close to production environments in the configuration and the infrastructure, or they just don't have as much production data that can break the code. So, not deploying on Fridays. We don't do that. The other thing that programmers don't do is speak normal language. Now, the language changes are pretty common for all professions, but for us, I don't know, I think there is a special place. Even now, when I'm making this video for people who are maybe not programmers, I have to think how to explain very simple things like deploying to production. It's becoming a habit that's so ingrained that sometimes I don't even remember how to explain things normally. The other thing that programmers don't do is do things manually. You know this meme, why spend 6 minutes doing something if you can spend 6 hours automating it? It's not a meme. We actually do that. And the reality is very simple, because when you have to do it a few more times, you will have to do it manually. And it's not just about the time, it's more about preventing errors, because everything that you do manually is error prone, because you're human and you can be tired. And of course our code creates more mistakes, but we feel more comfortable with that. And another thing that programmers don't do is hierarchy. I'm having this problem every time I talk to my family members, and I have to explain that yeah, I have a manager, technically I have a boss. My boss doesn't determine my work. My work is determined by the company, the users, the direction, the priorities, the OKRs, just name it, it's there. In a way, my manager is there to protect me. And this is drastically different. Many developers are used to flat or fake flat structure when you do have a lot of manager and hierarchy of managers. But you sometimes have good relationship with the manager of your manager of your manager. And sometimes you skip levels, and it's not really considered bad in programming. And of course, it depends on the company, but it is a reality for a lot of them. Okay, so what do we do with programmers? First of all, a lot of us call ourselves software engineers and never programmers or coders. And it's not just because we want to call ourselves engineers because it's cooler. Of course, it is a consideration. But most importantly, we want to highlight the difference between a person who writes the code and the person who engineers a product. You know, a software that can live for years, that can be maintained, that can be improved, versus like writing a script that will just create something for you. Plus, for me personally, I always use the term software engineer because it's more language agnostic, and I can highlight that I'm not a Java developer or a Python developer. I'm a software engineer. Give me a language, I'll learn to use it. But the fundamentals are there. That makes us more than coders. The second thing that we all do is we treat everything as a personal challenge. You've probably heard stories about people debugging something for hours and staying super late at night, just not being able to leave the computer, working on the same problem. That's a real thing. Once you are invested in problem deep enough and it doesn't work, you cannot just let it go. You have to finish it. And this is the trait that is common for a lot of engineers. I just realized that I'm not shooting it in the proper quality. Oh well. The third thing that we do, okay, I don't do it personally, but a lot of people are using CLI for everything. I've met a lot of colleagues with varying degrees of intensity who are living in terminals. I don't do that. I use terminal in moderation. I like my buttons. Some things I don't trust the buttons to do, so I do it manually in the terminal, but it is definitely a trait of software engineering. And the last thing we do is we are over-engineering every problem we have. And don't get me wrong, it's not a good thing. It's just something that you are so used to. Every time you're working on something, you have to think about how are we going to maintain it, how it's going to help us with the future features. And if you don't, sometimes it leads to very bad consequences. So with time, it's becoming more and more of a habit. And yeah, sometimes you do a very simple thing and you end up over-engineering it into a we're all learning to not do it, but it's definitely a thing. So that was it. Those were my things that we do and don't do. Let me know if you agree or not in the comments below. Maybe there is something very obvious that I missed. Let me know, and I'll see you in the next video.